All right. Hello, everybody. I would like to start by showing you my newest shiny and saying, I love you all. And then I would like to talk a bit about the road to getting to this awesome place where I am now. Greenbelt. The road to Greenbelt was riddled with some insecurities and fears, especially in the week leading up to it. Oh, well, I'm not sure I'm ready. Can I do this? It's quite a responsibility. So I said, after Angel shed some clarity on it for me, I went like, okay, do I want this? Yes. So let's go for it. Even when I was scared, freaking out, I just thought, no, I'm going to get there. And if I'm overwhelmed, I will talk to my teacher about it. So my teacher and my fellow students helped me through every hurdle along the way. Basically said, I will do this. Okay, there's a hurdle. Can I overcome it alone? No. Okay, teacher! And in doing so, I got to the place where I am now, where I can get in my heart and say, I love you, and actually have it mean something. So as you can see, freakouts, they happen, but if you just go to your teacher whenever you don't know what to do, you'll get through it. And sometimes your teacher might say, well, this, but eventually you'll get through it. There might be hurdles, there might be obstacles, you might freak out, you might want to go in the corner and cry, but you'll get there. So go for it. Don't let fear stop you. Joy and love.
Hi everybody. Gimli just said he made Greenbelt, but I feel like he left out what may be the most important thing. This last week you said you decided you wanted it. But can you tell me why you wanted it? I mean, if it's just another stone to hang around your neck or belt to wear around your waist, so what? Why did you want to be a Greenbelt?
It's a stepping stone to getting where I want to be, and that is the pack leader of the sources, so I can help them get unstuck, get going again.
So you want to help the other students, and this will help you get there. All right, that's a reasonable reason. It's important. If you play a video game, you may find that when you reach a new level, you get new skills. Here you don't. Nobody's going to hand you a +7 battle axe for reaching Greenbelt. And so it's not obvious sometimes why you'd want to make it there. Gimli's reason is a good one, wanting to help other people. Roja would have given the same reason in her day. It's for those of you who haven't figured it out yet. There are energy centers in the body from which we work. And the energy center which is associated with the heart, which is the most important one. This is where we truly have compassion, where we really care about people, where we learn what it is to love. It's here. And these, they relate to the belt, and the belt that relates to this one is a green belt. So if you've got an orange belt and you're working on this stuff, it's very, very important. But you don't have this one yet online and strong and active enough to impress Roja. And Roja's got a pretty good measurement here. She can hand someone who's a green belt a book of poems about the heart, and they'll feel it. She can hand someone who's not a green belt the same book, and they'll say, oh yeah, those are interesting. The green belt here is really significant. It means something. It means your heart's online. And when your heart's online, for the first time in your life, you can finally start to live. with your lover or spouse, with your kids, your parents, your friends, you can finally look at them and say, I love you, and know what that means. Because while you're still living in your guts, you can say those words. But that powerful, heart-opening love that sits here, you won't know until your heart's stable. You can get your heart stable without reaching Greenbelt, but you can't reach Greenbelt without getting your heart stable. And so if another student comes to you and says, I'm having trouble, or I'm confused, or give me a scan on this, or help me with that, and you don't have a Greenbelt, they're not going to trust you completely. They're not going to say, okay, I'm going to listen to what you have to say, or they shouldn't. If you're an orange belt, say, and you're going to a white belt to say, help me figure this out, help me find this thing, you shouldn't trust what they're saying. Not because white belts are doing something wrong, but because they're just beginners. And yellow belts are sorting through all the emotions and the gut muck, and orange belts are learning all the things about how to relate and how to finish closing off the messiness in the guts. It's not till green belt you can truly heart scan. And until you can truly heart scan, you can't get a truly deep scan. So, this is an extra incentive to reach green belt. If you wish to help people, your fellow students, even your teachers, won't come to you and ask your scan and really trust it until you have that green belt. Now, it's not like it costs anything. It's not like I'm sending anybody a bill to reach green belt. All you got to do is do the work and get your heart online. And so, this isn't about us trying to convince you to do something for our sake. This is about me telling you this is for your sake. You do not truly live until your heart's online. You are not truly alive until your heart's online. So for those of you who are able, work towards that green belt. And to Gimli, congratulations.
Thank you.
Last week, I talked about sexuality and relationships. Now, I tried to be very careful because I know this is a sensitive subject to many people. Some of you have never had sex or only had sex with one person. Some of you are very insecure about sex. Some of you don't even know how to date comfortably. And so I've approached this area very carefully. Some of you are probably religious, which means you may have religious prejudices against sexuality, homosexuality, sharing honestly with one another in a way that your church doesn't approve. And I addressed that last time as well. And all of these things can make us nervous and uptight and afraid. And so this week my intention, or this time my intention, was to give everybody a chance to give me their questions, to say, look, I'm really worried about this, or I'm scared about that, or this is really uncomfortable. And maybe find a way to address those things. Anybody who is around here knows that you can't come and you can't leave, you can't enter and you can't leave without getting a hug. It's just part of it. If there's a big crowd here, it may take you 15 minutes to leave. And anybody who's done it knows that it's a really wonderful thing. It's not, oh gosh, I have to hug people. It's, this is great. Martin gives the most wonderful hugs. And touch is part of who we are as biological beings. Now your spirit, some larger part of yourself out there, it doesn't need physical touch, it doesn't care. But for now, most of who you are is right here in the biology that you wear, in the suit that you wear, the physical body that you call you. And that physical body needs to eat, and it needs to sleep, and it needs to exercise a little. It can't just lay in bed forever, it will get sick and die. And it needs human touch. It needs to be touched, just a gentle touch on the arm or to be close to a person. Your body needs that. Who you are in this life needs it. In prison, one of the most challenging things they do to people is to put them in solitary confinement, where they can't touch people, they can't talk to people, they're just all by themselves. And people go crazy in solitary confinement. They just don't handle being isolated well. You, as a Homo sapiens sapiens, a human being, are not qualified to live without communication and touch and interaction. And while you're in this body, you're not capable of living without sexuality. Now, you can join the priesthood or become a nun or join some ritual order where you never have sex. That's fine. But you cannot live without sexuality. It's part of everything you do. Every breath, there are pheromones in the air. Every time your heart beats, it's pumping chemicals, which Candace Pert would tell you is moving emotions through your bloodstream. And these emotions and these pheromones, they generate a sexuality in you. It doesn't go away. You can't ignore it. And if you try and ignore it and repress it or shove it aside, it's a bit like gut muck. The fear that is the root of most gut muck doesn't magically appear. It comes from a joy center that's leaking. It's not working effectively. And when that leaks out, that should be joy, it becomes fear, and the fear makes anger, and makes sadness, and it makes hopelessness, and it makes anxiety and panic. It doesn't happen magically. It comes from a joy center that's been repressed, that's not healed and healthy. And the same will happen with your sexuality. If you hate the fact that you're in a male body or a female body or a transgendered body or something else, if you hate the fact that you have sexual thoughts or sexual feelings and you try and repress those things, it's going to be just like having a joy center shut down. Instead of bringing healthy energy up higher and higher until it gets to the heart and you join Gimli and the others at Greenbelt, it's going to leak out to the sides. And it's going to make anxiety and fear and rage and bitterness and frustration. And maybe the biggest one is destructiveness. The sexual center is also the creative center. And if you're repressing your sexuality, then you're not going to be an effective creator, whether it's music or art or even just talking well. And when you repress your constructive side, it comes out as a destructive side. You start bashing yourself. You start fighting with your spouse, your partner, your family. You start tearing things up. You listen to angry music because you're angry. You dress all in black. You paint your room in black. You just get caught up in a destructive thing that isn't healthy. So what I'd like to tell you is that sexuality, not necessarily sex, I don't care if you have sex with people, but a healthy sexuality, this is necessary for getting your heart online. And an unhealthy sexuality will cause anger, fear, panic, destructiveness, all these shadows. So now you've got a plus for bringing that sexual center into something healthy so that you can get up here and really care about people, really love people. And you've got a warning, a sort of carrot and a stick, that if you don't do it, you're going to be self-bashing, you're going to be sabotaging relationships, you're going to be hurting yourself and others. This piece has to be healthy. I know it's terrifying to some of you, I know it's intimidating to some of you, I know it's uncomfortable, awkward. That's okay. Those are just feelings. If you're willing to face the fact that you're intimidated or uncomfortable, you can start to at least talk about it. For any of you who is at least an orange belt, you know that there was a time where emotions terrified you. But you've learned to feel your emotions and to let them go and to ground them. Some of you, when you were white belts, probably couldn't go into a bar or a crowded shop or even a supermarket because the energy, the emotion is so strong. But by the time you reach orange belt, you can walk through those places and you feel all the emotion, but you ground it and you handle it in healthy ways. This is what I'm suggesting you begin to do with sexuality. You address it. You look it right in the face. You say, yes, you're part of my life. And you begin to face it and handle it in a healthier way. I'm not saying go out and start having sex with different people. I'm not saying go out and be wild. If you're married, I'm not saying go out and cheat on your spouse. What I'm saying is begin to address that sexuality is part of you. Just accept it. And once it is, you can begin to live in healthier ways. Now, Roha, do you have some questions in front of you? Are there any that seem relevant?
There are students asking how a person's health, energy health, and alpha belt level affect the experience.
The actual experience of sexuality?
Yes, that's the question.
How does your energy, health, and belt level affect your experience of sexuality? Well, if you're a white belt and you've not yet begun to move into the guts, and you don't yet have your men and fen, your male and female energy nodes tamed, then the mom and dad energies, the broken pieces in here, are going to be angry and frustrated and confused, and you're going to find yourself dating or end up married to your mother or your father. It's such a commonly accepted idea that almost everyone knows it, that little girls end up dating people just like their father, and little boys end up marrying their mother. And you will pick out partners who treat you like your parents did. And for many of us, this wasn't ideal. Our parents weren't, no matter how much they cared, they didn't always give us what we needed. Perhaps they were critical or abusive in little ways. And you will end up finding a partner in the experience of sexuality who treats you like your parents, who recreates those childhood things. So if you can get to at least yellow belt and begin to tame the men and the fen, you won't have to date your parents anymore, which greatly opens up the field. A lot more people out there. And it makes it less painful. You can, if you sleep with enough partners that you begin to notice this, you can grow tired of sleeping with your mother or your father over and over and over. This will give you some more options. Now, the Sexuality Center sits here at the Emotional Center, right here. They're all mixed up. Sexuality, creativity, and emotion. They're all linked. So when you're becoming very physically, sexually excited, your emotions are all coming up. And so are your partners. And this is a time where you generate fear and anger and anxiety and confusion and hopelessness and excitement and all kinds of emotions all jumbled up. And you get so overwhelmed by those emotions that you lose track of the experience. And so from white to yellow belt, you quit dating your parents. From yellow to orange, you begin to tame your emotions so that the experiences of that moment are of that moment. You're not bringing in all these buried emotions from you and from him or her and mixing them in. And should you, share a sexual experience with 3 people or 5 people or 20 people, you're getting all those emotions from all of them. If you can make orange belt, you'll pass that place and actually experience it for itself. And this may sound a bit cliche. I do not intend it to. I'm very serious. But when you reach green belt and begin to bring the heart online, it's actually an experience that's astounding. Because when you have your heart online and you can really look at someone and say, I love you, it's an amazing feeling. If any of you has ever fallen in love, you walk around and the lights are brighter outside and the colors are prettier and you just have a dopey smile on your face. When you begin to reach green belt, and then as you become stable in green belt, you get to a place where that feeling is a part of your life. You may not always feel it, but you can always tap it. In just a moment of focusing on your heart, the colors get sharper and clearer, and the lights get brighter, and things get happier and easier. And so if you have that online, that being in love feeling, and you go through the experience of sexuality, it's no longer just a physical release. It becomes this intense, deep, real piece of sharing. Does that make sense to you? Does that answer that question for you?
Yes.
Okay. Roha, why don't you ask me the questions?
If someone is thinking of exploring sexuality and they want to explore it with another person, are there do's or don'ts to going about it, or do you just step up to someone and say,
If you want to have sex with someone, is it safe, and are there do's and don'ts? Personally, I don't like do's and don'ts. Anybody who can scan well doesn't need them. But I understand that before orange belt and perhaps before green belt, it can be tough to always scan correctly. And if you're horny and they're attractive to you in some way, it may get even tougher to scan clearly. So let me see if I can give you some very simple ideas of do's and don'ts. First off, if you're either a sensor or a source who's fairly sensitive, the biggest don't I can give you is don't meet a stranger, find they're intensely sexually attractive, and sleep with them. 95% of the time, now I've worked with a huge number of people in my lifetime, 95% of the time when that happens, It's because either they're intensely horny and you're picking up theirs, or this is someone who really needs your help. Someone who's very, very broken. There is a healer in all of us, and when you see someone who's very hurt that you can help, it draws you to them. It makes you want to reach out and help them. And that drawing, that strong draw to a person, can mimic the feelings of sexuality. So if you find someone who's strongly appealing or attractive to you, what I would say is go find some place where you can sit by yourself for an hour and ground and center and breathe and do your best to scan. Is this person actually a good partner? Or am I just picking up theirs? Or is this someone I need to help? And if you can't get a clear sense of that, then go find yourself a greenbelt sensor. Find someone who is good at the sensing part of this process and ask them. I found this great person. Here's their name. I feel this strong feeling. Is it okay? If they're good, and most of our greenbelt folks are, they won't tell you no or yes. They won't tell you good or bad. They'll give you information. They'll say, when I scan it, I feel like you're being called to this person to help them, for instance. And if that's true, then you don't want to explore sexuality. Most of my counseling work has been with people who've been sexually abused. Abused as children, raped in violent relationships. Almost all of my work is with these kind of folks. And a staggering number of times, the work has been with people who found someone who needed their help, and instead they got in a relationship with them. And it just spiraled further and further downhill until it was violent and destructive for both partners. So, this would be my strongest, if I were to give you any rules at all, my strongest no here is don't jump because you feel it. Take some time, scan it, or get someone to help you scan it, and make sure it's a good situation. If you're already timid about sexuality and uncertain, and you find yourself a bad lover or someone abusive or violent, it's going to steer you away from it for life. And that's just not a healthy way to start. If you have some experience in sexuality, some of you will recognize this as, oh, I was in a relationship and I remember that I was destructive or my partner was destructive, I didn't know why. And yes, I see some agreement here. And very likely it is because here was a person you were supposed to help and not sleep with. Strongest do's, that's the don't. The strongest do's here would be completely honest, 100%. Now, if you watch people, watch movies about people dating or go to bars and watch people, it's all lies. The idea is to convince that person you're amazing enough. And so you lie to them and you tell them your job is different, or you tell them that you really like something about them when you don't, you just want to get in their pants. It's all just lies. And while, if you want a one-night experience, that's possible. You can lie to people and manage a one night. But you will not explore sexuality in a healthy way. I suggest from the very beginning, be honest. And if your partner can't handle that, good. You know not to waste your time. You say, this is who I am, and I want to learn about this, and, would you like to explore it with me? It might be fun. And when you're doing that, you're going to tell them, I feel honesty is incredibly important. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's some things I'm not going to tell you because I'm embarrassed about this part of me, but, I'm not going to lie to you. And then you ask them to do the same for you. You're probably not used to this, but I want you to be completely honest with me. I don't care if it hurts my feelings or, causes trouble. I want you to be honest with me. And if you can both do that, have that honesty, you're going to find that it's much, much easier. Second in the line of do's is communication. Whether it's about if you live with someone and they leave their stuff on the floor and it bothers you, communicate it. Hey, it bothers me when you leave your stuff on the floor. Maybe they don't change, but you've communicated. You don't do that, it builds up and builds up and builds up and causes all kinds of chaos. Just communicate. Communicate everything that seems relevant. Be understanding, be gentle. Remember that whoever your partner is, the odds are good that they don't have at least a green belt and more than 50 lovers in their background, so they've got lots of experience. So, be understanding. They're just learning as well. Be gentle with them. And I think Roja has a no in if you're in Elf Path, teachers and students don't sleep together. There's a lot of reasons for that, but for now, let's just say that's one of her rules. If you're going to be in Elf Path, don't fool around with your teachers or your students. You want to fool around with the other students? Well, it may go well and it may not, but avoid teachers and students. Next question.
Kinks and fetishes.
What about it? Kinks and fetishes.
Are they okay? Where do they come from? Do we accept and celebrate them?
Are they okay, kinks and fetishes? There is a religion which is still in force today where the men and women never take off their long underwear. They think their long underwear protects them from devils. Now, this is a huge religion with millions of followers. So, when they have sex, it's always in what's called the missionary position with the man on top, and they always keep their long underwear on so that, the devils don't bother them. Once you start making rules about sex, about sexuality, about all this stuff, you end up heading towards that. For those of you who know what it is, you might think that's reductio ad absurdum, but it's not. I'm not taking it to an extreme. There are millions of people who live this way now. For a time, it's one of the fastest growing religions around. So what I want to tell you first off is there are no rules when it comes to sexuality. Just as there are no rules when it comes to emotions. If you feel sad, okay, it's a feeling. Feel it. There are no rules saying this is a bad feeling or this is a good feeling. There are no rules with sexuality. There are some laws. Many places you can go to prison for breaking the laws about sexuality. Know the laws where you're from and don't break them, or if you break them, don't get caught. But there are no rules. There is no right and wrong. If you want to be tied up or spanked, it's just an experience. If you do it with communication, with honesty, there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to have sex with animals, some people do, it's not inherently wrong. There is no right or wrong here. I see. Already, if people want to argue with me, there is no right or wrong. No absolutes. If you're doing something that will hurt someone, if you're doing something that will harm someone, you probably don't want to do it just because it's destructive to ourselves and others to cause harm. But the thing itself isn't wrong. It's the desire to harm that is wrong. And I don't feel very strongly, based on working with more than 10,000 people in the area of sexuality, that there are any rights or wrongs. Next, I'll tell you that when you walk down the street, you may be thinking, I have this kink, and all of those people are vanilla. What's wrong with me? And the truth is, I've met phenomenally few vanilla people in my life. I've met very upstanding, gentle, caring people who have a rape fantasy. They want to be tied up and raped. I worked with a beautiful student who did very well, and her biggest fantasy was to be tied up naked in some public place where everybody could come by and fondle her, and she had no control. Now, you might think that's insane, but that's what turned her on. What I'm telling you is this isn't right or wrong, and that everyone out there has kinks. You'd have to really look to find someone who wants to eat vanilla ice cream, and only vanilla ice cream for the rest of their life. You'd have to really look to find someone who only wants vanilla sexuality. They're out there. It's just that it's rarer than you'd think. What you might call kinks. Whether it be just getting out of the missionary position. There's a time that a woman could be burned at the stake for wanting to be on top. Or a doggy style, or something very extreme. Dressing up as bunnies and playing with carrots. I don't know what you consider extreme. It's all okay. Do it with communication, honesty, as much as possible love. It's all okay. Now, I will say there's a prejudice that people who have these fetishes, kinks as you call them, are somehow wrong. I belonged to a group at one point called the Eulenspiegel Society, which is the oldest and best known BDSM group in the world. For a year or two, I was part of that group. And when I lived in Manhattan, in New York City, I spent some time in the inner circle with these people. I saw an HBO special about men who like to be treated as infants and made to wear a diaper, and it's called infantilism. And the guy that HBO interviewed out of the entire world to describe this experience and talk about was one of the guys in the inner circle of the Eulenspiegel Society in Manhattan. There, on that same special, there were various dungeons and medical facilities and so on that they explored. Most of them I have been in. In the big cities in New York, San Francisco, London, and others, I've played with these people. And what I want you to understand is that among that group, the inner circle of the Eulenspiegel Society, am I losing you? Are you bored by this? Among these people, they were honest. They cared about each other. They were gentle, they were kind, they were understanding. If someone was in trouble, they would all pitch in to help. And they were so much fun that when they weren't playing, they were just people. They had cookouts or they went through kitchen stores. You'd be amazed how many kinky things are in a kitchen supply store. It's astounding when you go with the right mindset. They were amazing people. They were, of all the non-metas, the people who haven't been working in the meta I've worked with in this lifetime, this group who actively practiced BDSM and had for years, were the most caring, kind, gentle, wonderful people I've met. I've been all over the world, in monasteries, in ashrams, in Buddhist communities, in sitting zazen in a dojo with Zen practitioners. And these people, the ones you would call kinky, were the kindest and gentlest and most beautiful ones I've met. So this is what I want you to understand. This isn't wrong. It's just part of who you are. And if you want to explore it, talk to your partner. Don't just walk in with a leather mask carrying a whip and expect them to be okay with it. Talk to them. Say, I'd like to explore this. And they say, well, that's too weird. I don't want to do it. Then you don't. Or you find a partner who does. But communicate. And with proper communication, safe words, and so on, it can be a truly wonderful experience. It's basically an expression of physical sensation and a sharing of the emotions and the heart of who we are. And that's all sex is. An exploring and expressing of emotions and the heart, either alone or with others. It's more fun with others. And so, whether you are completely vanilla, you never leave the missionary position, or whether you try any number of kinks, it's all just exploring and expressing. Do it with communication and honesty and gentleness. All right?
A lot of people online and young people, they say they feel asexual. Is it possible to be asexual?
Is it possible to be asexual?
Can you still have a healthy dose?
Is it possible to be asexual? This is an important question. It's an important question for metas, for the new people. See, a lot of the new ones have symptoms of what is clinically called Asperger's. And in Asperger's, you don't read social cues as well, and you don't understand social settings as well. And these people, which is most of us in the meta community, we start to withdraw from the world a bit, because we just don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to us. People respond in strange ways, or they don't get our sense of humor. We feel like we're an alien trapped in a physical body. It's like they're all there, and I'm different, and I don't get it. This is an incredibly common experience. There are tests for meta skills, and one of the questions asked is, do you feel like you're not from here? And another is, do you feel like you don't belong here? Like you're different from everybody else? Yes, you do, but you're not. Because every meta in the world who's waking up has these sensations. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I'm different. Now, I've already answered this question, can you be asexual, when I started. Sexuality is part of you. Every breath, you're inhaling scents that are shaping your emotions. Every beat of your heart, various chemicals are moving through your system. This is all sexuality. It doesn't go away. From before you're born, through infant, childhood explorations into very late old age, sexuality remains a part of you. You don't grow out of it. You will in time, if you grow old enough, grow to a place where it's not such a big deal. The intense drive that you have when you're 15 is not so strong when you're 50. But you don't ever get free of it. And you don't want to. It's like wanting to chop off your arm so that you don't feel something uncomfortable, or chop off your legs so you don't walk out of the house and get in trouble. This is part of you. It's part of everything that you do. It doesn't go away. There is no one who is truly asexual. Now, in my experience, there are degrees of sex drive. I've known people who want to have sex 3 to 5 times a day. I think it's wonderful. I personally think everybody should be having sex 3 to 5 times a day. I think it'd be great. But I have also met people who once a week or once a month was enough. They just didn't have the drive for it. And so for them, it was just a chance to share and reconnect with their partner. It wasn't as big a deal. It's useful to understand that there is a distribution, a scale. And if you figure out where you fall, if you're a 3 or 5 times a day person, or if you're a once a month person, or if you're somewhere in between. But even the once a month people still have sexuality. And it's useful to know, because eventually you want to talk to your partner or potential partner and say, hey, I'm a 3 times a day person, what about you? If they say, whoa, once a week is enough, you're probably going to run into trouble. It's one of those compatibility issues. It's like saying, oh, imagine a man saying, I'm straight, and a woman saying, I'm gay. Well, that's a compatibility issue. Or the reverse, a woman saying, I'm straight, and a man saying, I'm gay. Sex isn't going to work. You're not compatible. And this is the same. If you vary on the spectrum, you won't be compatible. Let me suggest, though, for those of you saying, well, I'm way over here, I don't need this. You're probably wrong. I had a student at one point who used to tell me that when you know you're right, you're wrong. That is, when you're absolutely certain about something, you're wrong. You can never scan something 100%. Anything real, any continuous distribution of data, you can never be 100%. In a continuous distribution, there are an infinite number of possible answers. And there's one chance in an infinite amount, which is mathematically very close to 0, of 100%. So if you're sure, absolutely sure, you're probably wrong. I encourage you to rethink it. It's more likely that you're scared, or repressed, or frightened, or damaged, or scarred in some way by your past lifetimes, this lifetime's past. And I would encourage you to explore it gently with your teachers. Talk to them, communicate, get their guidance. And you may find that you actually do enjoy sexuality. You've just never had a partner who understood you and you understood. Fair enough?
Sexuality can be scary because it brings out a lot of primal instinctual things and can run away with you. So how do you learn to trust your own sexuality?
Next question.
How about sexuality in very young children? Do you encourage it? How do you handle it?
How do you handle sexuality in young children? This is an important one because I have counseled so many people who were forced into sexuality when they were very young. An astounding number. When I was in the field, the estimates were 1 in 3 women would be sexually abused in her lifetime, most as children, and 1 in 5 men. And the 1 in 5 isn't clear because men are underreporters. They don't talk about what happened. But the truth is, it's a vast number of people. 1 billion or more people on this planet have been sexually abused. And so the sexuality of children is an incredibly important issue. I want to suggest to you that taking your 5-year-old to bed and having sex with him is sexual abuse. They're simply not old enough to make this decision for themselves. At the same time, the other extreme. Imagine that your 5-year-old and a neighbor kid are talking about sexuality or they've gone in a closet and taken their pants off to see what other little kids look like. And you come in there and say, "What are you thinking? How dare you, you wretched little child?" That this repression is as damaging as a rape of a child. The one extreme, you force them into sexuality. The other extreme, you terrify them of it. To yell at your children about sexuality is as damaging as raping your children. Everybody's sexual from the time they're born. And this is an area that's going to take a lot of research and a lot of growing and a lot of gentle practice. But we are going to have to learn to accept that. We are all sexual from the time we're born. And so when your 3-year-old says, "Tell me about sex," you're not going to give them the same graphic details you might a 9-year-old who's, getting close to puberty and beginning to ask more intelligent questions. But you're going to have to give them some answers. Sex is something grown-ups do. It's a way they touch each other when they really love each other. Can I do it? No, you're too young, but when you're older, you can find someone and explore that with them. And in this way, just by giving them simple answers, the same way you might tell them, "Oh, that person gave you something, you should say thank you." You're teaching them social norms. You should be teaching them about sexuality. If someone does this to you, say no. Right? If you don't like it, stop. If you're curious, come and ask me, I'll tell you. Bottom line, children are sexual. And there are many folks who will be angry and fight that, but I've worked with a huge number of people who started to explore sexuality between 5 and 8. In this lifetime, I remember when I was 5, and I was 4 or 5, and I was curious. And I had 3 sisters, and my sisters and I tried to talk about it and explore it. And we all got beaten and yelled at and got into so much trouble for even thinking about it. It wasn't helpful for us. 2 of those 3 sisters ended up married to abusive partners and ended up divorced. The 3rd didn't end up divorced but still has a difficult relationship. If, from the earliest time, we had not been taught fear and violence and anger, we would have done much better. If I'd been taught a healthy attitude, I'd have made it to a place where I'm sexually healthy without having to go through all the pain and the learning and the mistakes. And so don't make your children go through that from the earliest ages. When they begin to ask about that, give them honest answers. And if they say, "I want to do something that isn't socially acceptable or that you feel is inappropriate," then you tell them, "I don't feel that's I don't feel that's good. We can't do that." Right? The same way you would tell them not to pick their nose when they're in public or, to cover their mouth when they sneeze. You teach them about appropriate sexual behavior. When we quit thinking of sex as some sort of scary, terrifying thing or some holy, sacred thing, and begin to see it as just part of life, like learning to eat with a knife and fork or brush your teeth before bed, we learn to think of it as just another part of our life. Then we educate our children in gentle and caring ways. So there's a lot more that can be said about that, especially with issues of children. But I'm going to step back and just leave it at that. If you have children, if you know someone who has children, if you're a teacher with children, just communicate with integrity, with caring, with honesty. And let that be enough. We may have time for 1 or 2 more questions, so pick the ones that seem especially useful. Not that one. Yes. Yes.
How do we deal with sexual abuse?
Good. Here's an area where I am actually an expert in this lifetime. How do we deal with sexual abuse? Because, again, I've counseled thousands of people, and most of them it was with issues of sexual abuse. This is an area I know a lot about. First off, it's a very vague question. How do we deal with it? Let me say that for those of you who've been through sexual abuse, and that if you're generous enough in your terms as everybody, whether you were physically abused as a child or as an adult, whether you were raped, or whether it was just being yelled at or repressed for being sexual, or somebody saying, oh, you're a pervert, get away from me. It's all abuse related to the area of sexuality. So if you're gentle enough in your definition, everybody's got some degree of sexual abuse. Either as abused or abuser, everybody's got some of these things. So first off, I want you to understand that sexual abuse, like fetishes, is not rare. If you've been through something horrible, you're not broken or damaged or terribly wrong or evil as a person. A huge number of people walk down the streets. 1 in 3 of those people has been sexually abused. Walk down the streets and count 100 people, 300 people. You count 300 people and 100 of them have been through sexual abuse just like you. Some much worse than you can imagine. I have in my time heard some stories that are unbelievable. Truly astounding that anyone could do this. Accounts of horrifying sexual slavery and abuse and violence and fear and terror and cruelty. There's horrible stuff out there. So understand, whatever you've been through, there are people who've been through and are going through worse. Right? So you're not broken. There's not something terribly wrong with you because this happened to you. Next, understand that no matter how small it was, even, I don't know, a parent yelled at you when they found out you've been masturbating as a young teen. That can scar a person. They can think, oh my God, I'm evil, I'm doing something horrible. But that's abuse, that's sexual abuse, and something in you gets hurt by it. So I want you to understand, first, if you've been through something horrible, there are people been through worse, and they're all around you. You're not the only one. You're not strange. Second, that even if the abuse is fairly small, if it has scarred you, you need to deal with it. You need to face it. You need to treat it just like gut muck. There's stuck emotion and fear and panic and anxiety. You need to feel it. Whatever it is, you just need to feel it and breathe and let it go. And in time, I can tell you from experience, in time, you will grow wise enough, aware enough, that you no longer hate this person for what they did to you. In time, there's a book called Radical Forgiveness. And the idea in this book, I quote it so you can take a look and get more ideas, more research on your own. But the idea in this book is effectively that you're a spiritual person, a spiritual being living a physical life. And whoever it was who hurt you, however they hurt you, is a spiritual being living a physical life. And when you leave this lifetime and go wherever you go next, you're going to see that person. As a spiritual being, they're going to think, oh, that was so horrible. I feel terrible that I had to hurt you that way. I feel awful about the things I did. And you're going to look at them and say, yeah, but somehow we agreed on this before we went in. And in its own way, it helped me in this lifetime. Now, all of the best sensitives I know have been through emotional and or sexual abuse. All of them. I have never met a really skilled sensitive who didn't have a painful and difficult childhood. It's possible that the two are related. I've seen a very strong correlation, but I'm not declaring that one causes the other. I am saying that I would not be so intensely sensitive if my childhood had been easy. Maybe it's that I never knew when the next piece of violence was going to happen, that I had to get very sensitive to try and predict it. That's one theory. But I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't been through the things that I had. And so someday, now many of you may not yet understand what it is to leave this lifetime. You may not yet believe there's anything past this lifetime. But you will, at some point, go on to what's next. And you will face to face with the person who either you abused or who abused you. And at that point, you're going to look them in the eye and you're going to say, thank you. I know that going through that abuse was terrible, but you, as an advanced spiritual being, having to do that to someone else, that was awful for you. That was really a horrifying thing to have to do to someone. And you may not get that now, and you may not believe that now. I'm telling you, this is the future for most of you. You have to get to a place where you've not just forgiven them and moved on, but radically forgiven them. So this is the ideas I'd leave you with on sexual abuse. Almost everybody has it. Don't think you're broken. If you have a partner you trust and you're working through it, talk to them about it. Hey, I went through this bad experience as a child, and I freak out when somebody grabs my neck, or when you use this word, or, maybe just move too fast. Tell them. And they'll be understanding and work with you. I worked with a beautiful woman at one point who had been kidnapped and repeatedly raped when she was 5 years old. And she was left out in the woods to die. And somehow she managed to crawl back to the city and get herself cleaned up. And she went on with her life. And she had a beauty that was astounding when it came to these things. She was an amazing communicator. When someone had a sexual issue, they could go to her, and she would talk about anything. Nothing embarrassed or intimidated her. She'd talk to anybody and give them guidance. She was just amazing. So again, I'll sum this up and close it because it's a scary issue and it's hard on everybody. But one, you're not strange, you're not broken. Whether you've been abused or have abused people, you're not badly broken. Most of the people in the world have one or both of these. Second, there are people who've been through far worse. Third, no matter how small it is, if it's hurt you, it's still damage that needs to heal. Fourth, someday you may be able to thank these people for having gone through this horrible experience with you. And fifth, communicate with honesty and integrity, with your partners especially, so they can grow through it with you. Whether you are abused or abuser, communicate and let them work through it with you. And if they can't, if your partner says, oh, I don't want to deal with you because that's too much, good, you found that up front. You don't have to spend a year or years with them. Communicate at the start. And with communication, with forgiveness, with feeling and letting go, all of us can grow through the abuse we've had. This world is in a process of growing through 50,000 years or so of abuse. The entire world. All of us, individually, and the world as a whole, are going through this. And so it's important that we begin to forgive, we begin to grow, we begin to communicate. One more. Good. Because we only have about 5 minutes left. I think Gimli started late, but we're running out of time. So, I've been trying to suggest to people that the whole idea of Elf Path is basically to live a healthy life, to live with integrity, to live with power, to live real, to feel and experience, to be part of your world, to figure out who you are and to be that. No more, no less. To figure out who you are and to truly be that. And you can find incredibly destructive and brutal ways. Go to a monastery and starve yourself and beat yourself with a whip every day and go through all kinds of trauma and find the way back to yourself. But you don't have to. It can be light, it can be easy, it can be fun, the path back to yourself. When I worked in psychology, they used to say that you can train a rat to run a maze. And you can train it either by shocking it every time it makes a wrong turn, so it's scared to make the wrong turns, or by rewarding it, giving it a little treat every time it makes a right turn. And the rats, they do better, they live healthier and longer, and probably, don't talk to rats much, but probably they have a lot more fun when they learn by reward and not by punishment. So with this idea in mind, I want to tell you that really the secret to this elf path that Roja is building, that you guys are working with, is that you are trying to make the process of figuring out who you are fun. Not difficult, not horrifying, not painful. Yeah, sometimes it'll hurt a little, sometimes it'll be a little scary. But you're trying to make it as light and as fun and as community as possible. And so, though we've talked about scary things like violence and abuse and fetishes and so on, what I want to tell you is don't go away from this talk with, oh my God, sex is about violence and fetishes. No, no, no. Sex is a way to communicate and share how much you care about people. Explore it like that. Let it be light and easy and fun. And if it's terrifying, if you're afraid someone's going to hurt you, or you're afraid you're going to hurt someone, talk to your teachers about it. Your teachers are able to communicate. Talk to them and say, hey, I feel like if I explore this, I'm going to end up hurting people. Or I've done this in the past and I've hurt people. Right? Or if I do this, somebody's going to hurt me. Communicate it. Work through it as a group. And as much as possible, don't take it serious. This isn't some big scary thing, and it's not some sacred holy cow. It's just part of life. It's, like learning to eat a particular kind of food. Just explore it. If you can, find a good teacher. You want to learn to eat the best Indian food or cook the best Chinese food? Find yourself a good teacher. You want to explore sexuality and make it interesting? Find yourself a good teacher who can help you and guide you. Someone who's gentle and understanding and caring. And as much as possible, have fun. As much as possible. Take it easy. Don't take it seriously. Remember to breathe. When it gets too intense, stop. Ground. Center and breathe. And communicate. I have actually, and it's annoyed the daylights out of them, but I have actually been having sex with a partner and said, okay, we stop. Right now. No, we can't stop now. No, we stop right now. I feel all this anger and fear coming up, and it's not good for us to keep going. We're going to stop right now, and we're going to talk about it. And sometimes they said, oh, I don't like this. This is terrible. Most of the time they said, you were right. I was starting to get scared, and I didn't know how to say it, and I'm glad we stopped and took a breath. And this is my response to all of you. Find people and talk to them. If you can get to it, hold hands, kiss somebody, see how it feels. And if you don't like it, try it with someone else. There are many kinds of coffee that I don't like, and yet I still drink coffee. There are many kinds of cheese that are just too stinky for me to eat, and yet I like cheese. There are flavors of ice cream I just can't stand, but I still like ice cream. And there are sexual experiences that I really don't care for, and some that I think are great. I encourage you to explore gently and patiently, caring, whether it be with your same gender or with someone else, whether it be with many partners or just one, whether it be with whole groups of people. Do what scans to you. Do it with gentleness and compassion, integrity, honesty, openness. And what you're going to find is that this can move from, ooh, scary, or, oh my God, it's holy, I can't talk about it, to, this is a part of life I can talk about and enjoy. And for those of you who say, oh, but I'm no good, I want to suggest that you take up something like dancing. With a partner. I'm not just talking about going to a club, slam dancing. I'm talking about find a formal kind of dancing and start studying. And what you're going to find is at first you step on your partner's toes, or you lose count, or you make mistakes. You actually have to learn to dance. You have to do it over and over until you get good at it. And even when you're amazing at it, if you're with a new partner, you don't know their moves or their steps. You can still step on their toes or not quite get it right. You have to dance well and dance with a partner for a while before it's easy and fun. And sex, just a part of life, is like that. That you really need to study and get some experience and some practice to get good at it. The first time you ever have sex, it's probably not going to be amazing. It isn't for most people. Because you don't know what you're doing any more than the first time you step on a dance floor if you've had no training. Accept that you're not going to be great at the start. You take up any new hobby, you're not going to be great at the start. It's by repeated practice, by enjoying it, by playing with it, and by getting to know your partner that you get really good at it. It can be an amazing experience. So, with those ideas, don't take it serious. Remember to have fun with it. And know that it's useful to practice and to play before you get good. And with those ideas in mind, you'll do fine. Now, that said, is there anything else you wanted to say to everybody? No. Is there anything else you wanted to say to anybody? Alright, so to try to lighten it for just a moment here, everybody take a deep breath. Because if the whole field of sexuality is scary for you, and it is for most folks, then talking about sexuality is scary. And so listening to me talk about it's probably got everybody nervous. Just breathe a little bit. And recognize this is part of your life. Yeah, this is part of your life. And you're going to have experiences, if you're willing to explore, that are wonderful. And you're going to have some that aren't great. And it's just part of life. As you get better, learn what you like, and learn to play with it and have fun, your life will be richer, more full, more alive. Don't take it seriously. Keep trying. Be honest. Communicate with integrity. You'll do fine. That said, what I haven't done is give you an exercise to play with until next time we talk to. And so for those of you who have a lover, a steady partner, I encourage you to push your boundaries a little bit. Actually communicate something you wouldn't normally communicate. Maybe try something you've never tried before, but communicate and talk about it first. I really want to try this, but I'm uncomfortable, and try it. And for those of you who don't have a partner, I encourage you to start talking to strangers. You don't have to hit on them or make it creepy. Just walk up and talk to an interesting person. Say, hi, how you doing? I went out with some of these kids today, and I watched a couple of them. Just walk up and talk to a stranger and be okay with it, and then walk away. Everybody smiled, everybody's happy. This is my encouragement, my exercise that I leave you with. If you don't have a partner, it's time to start broadening your circle. And you don't do that by advertising, hey, I need a sexual partner. You do that by meeting strangers and talking to them. And as you get to know them and talk to them again and again, you know, the next day, the next week, you see them again, you're going to find that some of them you get along with well and you want to get to know better. And some of those people may eventually develop into someone you want to explore sexuality with, and some won't. So start talking to strangers, start meeting people, start exploring. And as a secondary thing, start talking about sex with the people you trust. With your teachers, with your friends, other folks in Elf Path. If you get along with your parents, talk to them, talk to your friends, but talk about it and see if you can get folks to communicate. You're going to find that the vast majority of people on this planet, almost all of them, are just as uptight and nervous as you are. They don't want to talk about it, they don't want to think about it, it makes them... Talk to them. Find out that they're all uncomfortable. And in time, they're going to be coming to you and saying, well, you're the expert, you tell us. Not because you've had hundreds of lovers, but because you talk and communicate and share. So try it. Talk to strangers, and with people you know, talk about sex a little. Start learning and growing and becoming okay with it. Start facing it yourself. And as you do so, keep it light. Have fun. Good night. You gonna stop that recording?